Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipsters Curtain Calls. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I bring you compilations from season 6, 7, and 8 in a wonderful package of 67 podcasts entitled Crypto Hipsters Curtain Calls. This is episode 55. And the title of this episode is Thunderstruck? How Zero Knowledge Strikes Open the Chasm, separating the new, abundant, decentralized future from the ancient and nearly extinct traditional financial system. This podcast calls upon four clips from seasons 6, 7, and 8, one from season 6 and 3 from season 7. The first person I spoke with on this conversation, on this podcast, clips, and all these clips, the podcasts are available in their entirety on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. The first person I spoke with is the founder of Trace Labs. His name is Ziga, Drev. Ziga and I spoke in season 6 in March 2024 about building a decentralized world of knowledge sharing and data verification. The second clip was my conversation with Nick Cowan, who is the group CEO at VLRM, spelled capital letters, VLRM. We talked in May 2024 about how to transform the crypto industry into a $100 trillion market cap opportunity. Right now, as I record this show, we're about $2.5 trillion. We've got about $97 trillion more to go. And hopefully everybody will be around to help witness and experience that wonderful transformation that's coming, we hope. Next was my conversation with Alex Pruden. This was part of my series entitled Crypto Hipster Presents Reporter on the Ground. This is the third installment of that series. There's about 11 of them. We talked at Consensus 2024 in Austin about why zero knowledge is the next really very smart $1 trillion opportunity. Alex is the executive director at the Aleo Network Foundation. His background is basically Aleo is, the way he put it, is if Zcash and Ethereum had a baby, it would be Aleo. Zcash and Ethereum, as you know, are heavily involved in zero knowledge proofs and zero knowledge technology. And last but not least was a wonderful conversation in July 28, 2024, also season 7, with the CEO of the Mina Foundation, Hemecker. Kurt and I spoke about the birth, evolution, and future of zero knowledge. All these clips, like I said, are available in their entirety on the Crypto Hipster podcast station. Please check them out. If you find anything that's interesting and you want to know more, please do that. Again, this is episode 55, entitled Thunderstruck? How Zero Knowledge Strikes Open the Chasm, separating the new, abundant, decentralized future from the ancient and nearly extinct traditional financial system. I hope you enjoy this episode. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Like, what are people blindly or ignorantly missing out on that in this space, that they need to consider before building an AI company or trusting AI for the future? What are they? What's the spot?
Yeah, I think it's the AI will definitely leave a dent, a huge dent. Crypto was impactful, but I think AI is going to be 1,000 times or even more impactful on a global society. Perhaps just because of the sheer size and also because of the the technological advancements and talents that it brings into its vertex. I think though that people are also underestimating the challenges and the problems that AI is going to exacerbate, namely the challenges of verifiability, the challenge of the fidelity of the information that we consume. So I think this notion of model collapse, which will be brought about by the AI, is also going to show that not everything, or very little useful stuff can be based on synthetic data produced by the AI. Sooner rather than later, you need to root your decisions in a reality, and you need to build or utilize some form of like oracles for reality, and only then you can apply and augment the value of the information that you have produced in the real world. But without basing your decisions and just by relying and reproducing new stuff out of synthetic data, I believe will bring us nowhere, and it might like fool many people into thinking that they're actually bringing something useful to the table, whereas in fact they're fooling themselves and also fooling everybody else using their products. And perhaps we might sound as skeptics in that regard in this space, but we feel that we should first and foremost establish the ground rules, what the reality is, how do we seek truth. And even in this world where we have this abundance of information, we should still be able to somehow navigate through this complex world and establish the information provenance. And I guess I'm again like kind of promoting this verifiable web and the ability to ensure information provenance. But for us, it just seems that that's exactly what we need in this exciting world of AI.
Well, you alluded to it, what I was getting at, and I want to get to it directly. How do you think that middleware, you said you're a middleware expert, serves that role with the verifiability?
Yeah, well, we'll have to. I mean, this is it. It's not just us as a technologist or as a company that is going to bring about something useful to this space. There's a whole communities or even communities that are building complementary solutions that can essentially enable this verifiable internet for AI. And we building a middleware, we kind of need to understand that we can only go as far, and after a certain point we need to allow other builders or even make our solution compatible with others to actually achieve this vision for a verifiable internet. And sometimes it's really difficult to understand where that line is, because what users need oftentimes is a end-to-end solution, and in some cases we would even go as far as building the whole solution ourselves. But by and large, we try to kind of keep ourselves in a somewhat limited, so that we don't overdevelop or over-engineer. And that's why we stick to this notion of a middleware.
A lot of people have been talking about for years, talking about the killer app, right? And what's the killer app? And is it to replace Microsoft Excel? Is it to replace email? You guys have a different philosophy on the killer app, and you think that's government adoption, right? How is government adoption going to be the real game changer, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I think so. I guess we're quite very focused in on financial markets, right? That's obviously our sweet spot. So, and what we've taken really is basically a deep capital markets knowledge. And we've said, okay, how can we apply this emerging technology to make financial markets more efficient? So when we talk about killer app, that's really where we go in on. So I guess when we think about killer apps, and then I'll come very much to your point, your question. Killer apps. So for example, if you want issuers to be able to issue various instruments, and for those investors globally to be able to acquire those instruments in the unit size that they're choosing, over a wide range of currently inaccessible asset classes. You can use tokenization to facilitate that. So the killer app for us is that whole thing about, immutability and efficiency and all of that good stuff, but whilst also managing out your risks and enabling that 24/7. And you would not, if you were starting from scratch, design current legacy systems with the way they're currently structured. I don't think, right? You wouldn't, if you came down from space and looked at that on a piece of paper, you would say, why the hell would we build an infrastructure in financial markets to support that? Okay, so in terms of killer app, so what do I want to be able to do? And what do we want to be able to do? I like the idea of being able to move my assets instantly, cash and digital assets, to wherever I want to move them. And sometimes right now with trying to move dollars, it's just horrible. I can move $1 million of USDT in about 1 second. If I want to move $1 million, I've got to go through the degree of Spanish Inquisition of, where did the money come from? Who are you? Why do you want to do this? And it's just like, bloody hell. I want to be able to do stuff. And if you take an example of why we're excited at VLRM, okay, so here's one just small example, and then we'll move on to government support. Okay, so we have a token, right? We want you to be able to stake that token, which you can do today. And we want you to be able to earn rewards. Okay, that's exciting, right? So Avios do that on airlines, right? You can earn your rewards. What can you do with those rewards? Well, you could, I guess, convert them into USDT and then USD and go and buy a burger. Okay, why not be able to press a button on your app and turn those rewards into VLRM stock, right? We're listed, we trade on the stock exchange. So why not be able to bring together a customer, right, that's using our services, a token holder that is staking and playing a part in governance and all the good stuff that your token offers, but also be able to convert that customer into a shareholder. Think Apple, right? Loads of Apple. You're either, as Samsung or an Apple guy, right? So you're either, but if you own an iPhone, if you get that iPhone owner to own Apple shares, they're going to stick. We call that the investor concept, right? And if you can legally enable that in a regulatory environment to bring together the ability for customers to be able to swap between stock, services, rewards, their token, you can then start to cross-sell products to that investor. And that for us is the killer app. When we talk about VLRM, we're building technology, we're building markets. We're going to have VLRM Capital, but that's your killer app, where you're basically saying to a client, you're a shareholder, you're a token holder, you're a customer, and here's a bunch of services and products and lifestyle aspects that we want to provide you with.
So, why is the need for a Zcash Ethereum Baby? What's the need for privacy solutions?
Yeah, I think that everything. I don't think crypto has very many real-world use cases today without it. My favorite question to ask at conferences like this one are how many people receive their salary in USDC or at stablecoin? And the answer is virtually no one. I've met maybe one or two people. And the reason is people don't like to reveal how much they make. That's just a social thing. And that's why bank accounts aren't public information. But it's, that's just a kind of a social fact. So I think even though all of us here talk about how crypto is the future of finance, no one uses it. And I think what that reflects is the reality that a lot of the potential is there, but most of the value today is speculative in nature. And I think if we want to transition beyond that and actually accomplish real-world use cases, we need to make it useful, and we need to solve problems like that one. Like, why won't people take their salaries? Well, because they don't want to reveal their salaries. Okay, so privacy is a use case there. And I think for many payments-related use cases, particularly commercially, like you imagine running a business that has payrolls, maybe you have multiple employees that one is making more than the other. You don't want to reveal to them like the disparity there, or you don't want to reveal the contracts you have with suppliers. So for all those reasons, I think privacy is important, just for commercial interaction. If you think about the TradFi quote-unquote world, privacy by default is the default. Your bank certainly knows, but not everyone knows, right? And I think ZK is potentially a scenario where you can have take advantage of a blockchain-based infrastructure and all of its advantages, while still protecting the confidentiality of your data, and therefore being able to have better, stronger, trusted interactions. And I think this even goes beyond finance. You think about just the web, one unsolved problem on the web since the beginning was age verification. Like, you go to a website, like, in California, technically it's illegal to visit a social media website if you're under 13 without parental consent. And how do you enforce that? You can't possibly enforce that, right? Like, every one of these things is like a box. You're just like, hey, are you over 13? Yes. And there's not a mechanism to do that, but with something like a blockchain and ZK, you can build an authentication protocol, taking a real world identity, say a school ID with with an NFC chip, and you can port that onto a blockchain like Aleo's, and you can generate a zero knowledge proof about the validity of that document and about facts about you that are reflected in it. And so I think those are just two real world use cases that are totally unserved today. To be clear, I love crypto. I think the industry is amazing. It's come an incredibly long way, but I still think we're very far from achieving real world adoption for real world use cases, and that is really what Aleo is all about, and that is what I'm focused on. And that's why we're building the stack we're building, and that's why I think privacy and ZK and data confidentiality all matter.
I remember, I know a guy who created a company that helped companies do payroll in crypto. They're not around anymore. They went under when we had recent collapse, right? It hasn't been sustainable yet. So to get to these use cases, we have to embed sustainability, right, in the infrastructure, right? How do we do that?
Yeah, well, I think sustainability in that sense, just it has to be a business people want to invest in, and I think, most people don't want to. They would rather not take their salary in crypto, like, for a variety of reasons, which means that for financial use cases, like personal financial use cases, most people don't find crypto a compelling product. Most people in this room don't find crypto to be a compelling product, other than to speculate on. Of course, there's plenty of very proven speculative use cases, and by the way, nothing against the speculative use cases, nothing against that. It's just, I don't think we should pretend that it's something otherwise. And I think companies like the one you just mentioned, in fact, I'm giving a talk tomorrow about, you just look at companies that actually try and build businesses on top of this, instead of trying to launch a token. The disparity between the two is massive. And why is that? Because the token is naturally the thing that most people just speculate on, right? And I think, again, I'm definitely not a believer in like the blockchain, not Bitcoin, no tokens kind of with blockchain world. I mean, I think that was a trend several years ago. I'm not a believer in it. I do think tokens play an essential role in these ecosystems, but if that's as far as we get, we're not actually achieving what these things are capable of. And so I think we need to in short, to make it more sustainable, we need technologies at the base layer that enable builders to build applications that people actually want and use.
There was a lot of buzz about ZKs being the next $1 trillion opportunity. So looking forward, what are some of the more exciting use cases of ZK? What will they be, and why is it going to bring people forward into the next millennia?
God, so I can talk about that for a couple of hours, but I'll, at the very high level, just think of. So first of all, just in terms of blockchain itself, right? Like, why is blockchain important? Of course, it's an important aspect for the future. How do we move into a world where there's less trust in centralized organizations? How do we bring that into the wider world? And then how do we secure data around that? And that's kind of Web3 in general. But now, as soon as we start talking about zero knowledge, you start thinking, how do we deal with ensuring the integrity of computation that's been done? How do we deal with the requirements on, the one stream? On the one extreme is like anonymity. On the other hand, extreme, you have regulators that want to be able to collect data, and you have to find a middle ground. And ZK can help with that. But if you think about any industry, financial data, health data, news, media, scientific data, telemetry, supply chains, and you want to add a layer of selective disclosure. So that's really how we talk about privacy, because privacy is not about being anonymous. It's about deciding what you want to share, who you want to share it with. And a lot of the common use cases you hear around ZK, like anyone you talk about ZK, will talk about ZK, KYC, ZK, AML. For me, that's like a no-brainer. That's going to be an area where ZK takes off, certainly within finance and bridging kind of web traditional finance with DeFi, where you can create a zero knowledge proof of somebody's KYC and AML information. And the beauty of that is zero knowledge means that data itself, it's not there, it's not shared. Just the validity of the statement is then shared. So you could have a zero knowledge proof attesting that, you, Jamil, or somebody has passed KYC and the funds they've added into their crypto wallet are coming from a clean source. So the DeFi protocol doesn't have to capture any information about you, but it can just rely on the fact that there's a zero knowledge proof that this KYC, that there has been KYC that is still valid. And again, with a blockchain, right, that's a temporal aspect, that it's been captured and attested to at a certain moment in time. So that's certainly one promising area around the convergence of identity and traditional finance and DeFi. And then there's so many other areas too. If you think about like the Internet of Things is another area. And if you think about all of the connected devices that are there, and especially with AI now coming into that, and that's it. At Mina, we talk very much of the Internet of True Things, and we think we're on this new era. And right now, today, AI is predominantly a very nice, friendly chatbot on your browser. But AI is going to be moving, what I say is it's moving into the edge, which means it's moving into devices. So anywhere data about us can be captured, from your glasses, from your smartphone, from your smart refrigerator, right? Like there's going to be data that's being captured. And so we're going to want to have more control over what data is being shared and who it's being shared with. Just even think about like pacemakers, right? Like there's medical data, hardcore biometric data about individuals that are being transmitted right now over Wi-Fi and Internet of Devices, whether it's, whether you're talking about IoT in a home, IoT in medical devices, in supply chain, in energy management, transport. So adding this layer of zero knowledge where you can attest to the sanctity of that data without actually having to share that data provides an additional layer of security over it. And I think so. There's definitely applications like I mentioned before around ZK, KYC, identity, specific cases of how that can be done on Mina, as well as you can prove that you're eligible to participate in a permission pool on a DEX using identity and KYC information that you've provided on other applications.